Good evening, Broncos country. My name is Mike, known as the Hawk. I'm here to talk some Broncos football with everybody out there. To include a little bit of breaking news, which you might have mentioned, which you might have noticed today from the Micah Parsons trade from the Cowboys to the Packers. But we're going to discuss today some of the things that have happened recently, and we're going to be doing this every day. So we're going to be start talking more about the breaking news that happens with the Broncos. And I have no inside connections. I'm nobody special. I don't know the Broncos. I don't know anybody who talks to the Broncos. I just love the Broncos, and I hope you do too. And we're going to talk about them. But today we're going to cover some of the 53-man cuts that took place over the last few days, some of the practice squad additions, a little contrast between Sam Ehlinger and Audric Estime when they were both cut. And we're going to talk now about this breaking Micah Parsons trade and how it affects both teams. So, if you don't know, starting around August 1st, the Cowboys and Micah Parsons were having some contract negotiations that stalled and didn't work out well. And basically, Parsons said he wasn't going to play. He wasn't going to play under his current contract. So Jerry Jones was talking about, he was going to try to fix things and they were going to get this done. And next thing you know, he's being traded. So what happened is the Cowboys traded Parsons to the Packers for two first-round picks, one in 26, one in 27. There was a player involved, Kenny Clark, defensive tackle, former Pro Bowler, not that good of a player now. And then as soon as Parsons went over to the Packers, they signed him to a $188 million 4-year contract with $136 million of that contract guaranteed. Crazy money to me if you're talking about would you pay a quarterback or non-quarterback that kind of money to play on your team? I guess if you're a Micah Parsons away, I would do it. And if you weren't, I wouldn't. So that does make him the highest non-paid quarterback ever. The Cowboys lose the centerpiece of their defense, and now they kind of go into, well, what do we do now mode? And the Packers, assuming that their offense can stay as consistent with Jordan Love at quarterback and build on some of the things they did last year, the Packers defense might now be scary. And to me, the NFC is the Philadelphia Eagles and nobody else. So anybody can make a run in the NFC. So getting back to the Broncos, we talked. So it's the roster cuts that took place over the last few days. Sean Payton and George Paton, they say they conglomerated. Well, what's the word I'm using there? Not conglomerated, but they got together for 6 hours in the war room to discuss what was going to be taking place with these cuts, practice squad additions, trying to sneak guys through waivers. And that's something that the Broncos haven't had to deal with, quite frankly, in the last several years. There were some surprises, of course, as there is with any roster cut. When you talk about Kareem Reed. So to me, if you're asking, the Hawk, what the weak point of the Denver Broncos team is potentially right now, if everybody stays healthy, it's a strong point. But you've got an inside linebacker position with two guys that are on top of that depth chart who have a lot of injury history. So when they cut Lavelle Bailey, that was a big surprise to me. Now, they did bring him back to the practice squad, but I thought Lavelle Bailey was really kind of a surprise cut. And then they put Kareem Reed in there, who's basically an untested guy. I thought Bailey had a great camp, and apparently the powers that be don't agree with me, or at least they have some other. It could have had something to do with getting him through waivers. They thought they could do that, and they were worried about the other guy maybe not going through waivers. I don't know. But they did get Lavelle Bailey back to the practice squad. So that, to me, lessened the blow for what that damage might have been if they had lost him on waivers. And speaking of waivers, over the last 3 years, well, to give you an example, Damari Mathis went over to the Carolina Panthers, and Xavier Truss went over to the New Orleans Saints. I think there was a couple of other smaller moves, but the bottom line to that is that the Broncos over the last 3 years have not had this much people plucking off of their cuts than they had this season here, this week with the roster cuts, which is to me a testament to how the Denver Broncos roster has really, I mean, these guys were paper thin even a year ago. They've been able to build this roster and build depth despite the fact that they're still in some salary cap constrictions from the debacle that was Russell Wilson. And they're doing it. And, you know, George Paton has done a great job of putting this team together, I'm sure with a lot of input from Sean Payton. But again, there was more people claimed off this roster than the last 3 years combined. So to take a little bit of a transition here, today's live podcast is brought to you by my own company, ihangflatscreens.com. If you're in Denver, you need your TV put up, we can do that for you. We're veteran owned, me. Military precision installs, no nonsense, flat screens, pull-outs, whatever you got, we can put it on that wall, and we've got you covered. So hit up ihangflatscreens.com if you want to see us to come out there, and we're happy to do that. So some of the names that were on the practice squad that were, to me, good additions were, I talked about Lavelle Bailey, Sam Ehlinger, Michael Bandy was kind of a, you know, he's been on this team for a while. He always just kind of gets this far and makes the practice squad. Caleb Lohner, who was a tight end project, a 7th round draft pick, who had 4 receptions in college, all of which were touchdowns. But he was a basketball player, and he's been kind of a project. He didn't make the initial roster. He did clear waivers, and he is now on the practice squad. I think that's interesting, only because I can think of 2 players, 2 tight ends in the past who were one with the Chiefs and one with the Chargers, who were former basketball players and did well, had Hall of Fame careers. A.T. Perry, Adam Prentice, the fullback, which, you know, we're always going to have a fullback, even though we use one for, you know, 3 plays a game, it feels like, if that. Delarian Turner-Yell, who is a defensive back that's been on the team for a while. I was a little surprised he didn't make the roster, but he's back on the practice squad. That's good. And linebacker Garrett Wallow, who I honestly don't know much about. He didn't open my eyes at all during camp or any of the preseason games. So the stories that I wanted to talk about are of a contrast between Audric Estime and Sam Ehlinger. And if you don't know this, both of them were cut. Both of them did not make the initial roster. We'll start with Estime. The Broncos did wind up keeping 4 running backs. That was kind of the talk all through camp that they would do that, and they did. They kept the top 2 with J.K. Dobbins, Harvey. They kept Tyler Bidet, who I thought rightfully made the team. And then they kept McLaughlin, who was kind of a specialist. And I kind of anticipated he was always going to be a part of the team because I think Sean Payton just likes the role that he plays. Estime didn't do well in training camp or any of the preseason games until the final one when he got 15, 20 carries, I think it was, and was able to kind of build some momentum, albeit against backups and, 3rd and 4th stringers. But he did have some success in that final game. Now, he told everybody that he could talk to that he wouldn't come back to the Broncos practice squad if they came back to him and said that and asked him to. Now, in his case, it was kind of an interesting case of he fell up, because he did land on the Philadelphia Eagles practice squad. Now, he's behind a pretty good depth chart there. He may never see the field in Philadelphia, but he is on a Super Bowl champion team, so good for him. And then you moved that to Sam Ehlinger. Now, here's a small bit of controversy in my mind. Sam Ehlinger, who was the 3rd string quarterback, talked about when the Broncos cut him, that he wouldn't come back that he would come back to the Broncos, that he had been offered 53-man spots from other teams and turned them down to be on the practice squad for the Broncos. I think that's interesting. I don't know if I believe it. I think that might be a kind of an agent constructed story. I don't know if I believe this, but if it's true, and I don't know the behind it or what the contracts would be. But I think if you make the 53-man roster, you're guaranteed at least, I want to say, $1 million. And if you're on the practice squad, you make about $400,000. So why a guy like him would turn down that kind of money, I don't understand. But you could say, and the argument could be made, that he did it because he wants to learn under Sean Payton and be in this system for a year. He wasn't going to play as a third string quarterback anyway, unless disaster happened. And if that had happened with either Bo Nix or Stidham going down, the Broncos' chances of going anywhere this year were going to be nil anyway. But he is going to learn how to play quarterback under this system. And there's some people that believe that Sean Payton wants to use him as a Taysom Hill kind of guy that he had in New Orleans. I don't know that I buy that story. I don't know that anybody wants to be Taysom Hill other than Taysom Hill. I think he would rather be groomed as a quarterback and not a glorified H-back, running back, whatever they use Taysom Hill for. But the fact that he wanted to stay on the practice squad, if you believe his story, is a testament again to what he believes he can gain by being a member of the Broncos. Now, back that up 3 or 4 or 5 or 7 or 8 years, and the Broncos were the laughing stock of the league for, right after the Broncos won the Super Bowl with Peyton Manning, and that they had a decent year the year after. They went 9-7. I believe they did miss the playoff. They did miss the playoffs, and then they had a string of losing seasons. So we've gone from a team that was a laughing stock to a team that is respected, and there's the speculation now, and I don't know how much that is fueled by Sean Payton, but the Broncos are currently a Super Bowl contender. If you watched any of the offense during the preseason, I'm not sure I'm ready to buy into that theory yet. Now, and what I want you to understand is that here, I'm a Bronco fan, but I don't wear Broncos colored glasses. I'm going to talk as negative about the Broncos as I do positive if they do something stupid. Right now, it's fresh and clean. It's week 1. We don't have anything going on, so we'll talk glowingly until there's a reason not to. That being said, I didn't see much out of the preseason that would lend me to believe that the Broncos offense is all of a sudden going to go out there and rush for 3,000 yards or pass for 6,000. I'm making up dumb numbers, but I don't see that yet. I do see a quarterback in Bo Nix that's developing, and I think I'm pretty happy with his development. So what I'm saying is that the Broncos do have stability. They do have depth now, and I think that's more breaking news. I think that's a good thing for them. If the quarterback can kind of take the next step, and I don't really know what that next step is because he had a really darn good rookie season, but if he can build on that, even if he can do the same thing he did last year, I believe the running game is going to be better. I believe our tight end room with Evan Engram is going to be a lot better. Everyone's talking about how good the defense is going to be. I think our secondary with that addition from with Tufanga from San Francisco, Dre Greenlaw from San Francisco, if those two can stay healthy, I think you've got something going with our defense. Health is always a factor for that. But does our offense need to score 27 points to win games? No, I don't think so. And I think that's going to play into, the Broncos' success this year. Now, the Broncos are in the AFC, and you're going to have to deal with Kansas City, and you're going to have to deal with the Bills, and you're going to have to deal with the Ravens. And if the Bengals can find any kind of defense, you're going to have to deal with the Bengals. I think the Chargers are going to be a much better team this year. And I don't think the Raiders are going to lay down in this division either. So the Broncos have, to climb over those hurdles, but they made the playoffs last year. It's time to make the next step, and I think they can go from there. This coffee break is brought to you by Senka. So this being my first live broadcast of anything, really, I'm nervous. and I don't have an audience, and I don't know what's happening out there in YouTube land. This won't be long, but we're going to be doing this every weekday. I intend to do a segment after every game to kind of break down the game and my observations and your observations. And going forward, if I do gain a following, we'll have you guys interact with the chats. We'll talk about things during the chat, and we're gonna have a lot of fun with this. Big thanks to today's sponsor, me. iHangFlatScreens.com. We're a veteran-owned TV mounting service, military precision, no stress. If you're local and you need the flat screen on the wall, you know where to find me, right here. And tomorrow we'll be back again, 6 p.m. Mountain, 8 Eastern. And until next time, stay sharp, Broncos country.